In this tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to do some basic effects using Adobe Premiere. Now, this is not special effects. These are just regular effects. If you look at the clip I'm going to be using here, it's just this clip of some cars on a highway. It's what I'd call kind of raw footage, like nothing's actually been done. All that's happened is you've taken it from the camera, put it into Premiere, and then dragged it into your sequence. So there's nothing really too much to it. So I'm going to show you how to use some basic effects. Now, to get into your effects, or your effect controls I should say, you want to come up here and click on Effect Controls. If your effect controls isn't there, just go up to Window and choose Effect Controls and it should pop up. Now right now it's saying that there's no clip selected, so I'll just select this clip right here. And by default, every single clip or image, whatever you put into your sequence, is going to have motion, opacity, time remapping, volume, channel volume, panner. So these first two are the ones you'll probably use the most. So let's just look at the motion here. When I open up the little triangle here, it gives me all the options for motion. And one of the things I can do with motion is I can adjust the position. So anytime you see one of these values that has the little dotted underline, when you put your mouse over it, it turns into a finger with the little arrowheads on either side. You can actually click and drag to adjust it. So you can see I'm adjusting the position right now horizontally. Now I can also adjust the scale. So if I click and drag that, I can make my clip smaller or larger as I need to. Just one thing to be careful of, if you start zooming in like that, you are going to start getting pixels and it's not going to look very good, so just be careful of that. Now another neat thing you can do is you can actually click right on the word of all these effects, so in this case motion, and when I click on it, I can now just adjust it, using my mouse over here. So some people prefer that. It's up to you though. A few other things, I'll just take this back up to 100. You can also type it in, of course. A few other things I can show you here. You've also got a rotation. So, maybe you want to have your clip rotated like that for some reason. Most of the time when you're doing basic editing, you're not going to use these ones. You're not going to want to resize and rotate stuff. But sometimes, you need to do that to get a certain effect that you want. I'm going to close the motion here. And we'll look at the opacity. Now, the opacity basically refers to how much you can see through this clip. So, by default, it's 100, which means you can't see through it at all. But as I lower it, it actually kind of fades a little bit because underneath it is just black. So, as I make it more and more see-through, and I lower the opacity, you can see the background better. To give you a better idea of that, I'll just drag this up, and maybe I'll make a new color matte here. And a color matte is just a solid color. Say I put some red there. I can drag red in to my video 1 and extend it out. Now, when I click on my my original clip here, and I lower the opacity, see how you start seeing the red come through it because I'm making it a little more transparent. So those are the basic ones. Now, there's also a whole bunch of effects that Premiere has built in that you may find useful. So to access all of them, you just click over here on the Effects tab. And again, if the Effects tab is not there, just go up to Window and choose Effects. Now, your list might be a little different than mine. I've got a few add-ons, but for the most part, you're going to see these 5 here. And the ones we're talking about are the video effects. So I open them up, and like I said, there's a few extra ones. You might not have those, but a lot of them you will. So color correction, distort, generate, those are pretty standard ones. Now, I can just kind of scroll through these and decide what I want to do. Like, for example, let's say that I want to blur it, and I'm not sure where it is. I could just do a search here for blur. And any effect that has the word blur in it is going to pop up. So in this case, there's all these different blurs, and I don't know, I'll use maybe a Gaussian blur. All I have to do is take that effect, drag it onto my clip, and in my effect controls, I now have a new heading. So I have motion, opacity, time remapping, and now Gaussian blur. And there's some options for it. So there's something I can adjust, and as I increase it, you can see my clip gets a lot blurrier. Why would you want to use blur? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but again, I'm not worried about that right now. We're just talking about the different effects that you can put on it. If I don't want it, I'm just going to click it and hit the delete key, and it's gone. What else? There's a few other ones. One of them is called a flip. So maybe you want to take your clip here and you want to flip it. Well, I can drag a horizontal flip onto it, and you can see the clip is now flipped horizontally. You could also do a vertical flip, in which case it flips it vertically. Now up here you can see those are the effects that I just put on there. Now there's no options for horizontal flip or vertical flip. They're just there or they're not there. So I'm going to remove those now. There's a few other ones, and again, sometimes you just want to go through them and just look and see what's there if you don't know the name to search for it. So one of the ones that I know is kind of cool is called a wave warp, and it's under the distort category there. So if I take wave warp and drag that onto my clip, well, I have all these different options. You can see already it's kind of made my clip here a little wavy. This would be a great one to use for like a dream sequence if you're wanting to do a transition into a dream. So right now it looks like that. Well, I could adjust the wave height just by doing that, and I could increase or decrease the wave width. There's all these different types of waves. So there's all these different options, and you just have to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish. Now at any time, if you don't want it, you can delete it, of course, like I showed you, or you can just turn it off temporarily. So if I hit the little effects button there, it just takes it off. It's still there. All my settings are still here for the wave warp, but I've just turned it off temporarily, and then I can always put it back on. But again, I'm going to delete the wave warp. We don't need it. To show you a few other ones here, just to get the idea. A neat one is called crop. Sometimes maybe you need to crop a little bit out of your video. You can take the crop, which is under the transform category, drag crop in, and I have 4 options here. I can crop from the left, top, right, or bottom. And you can see as I adjust it from the left, it just crops a little bit out. And I could crop it from the right, and I could crop it from the bottom. So that's your basic crop. And last one I'll just show you here is it's called a basic 3D. Okay, and that one's in the perspective menu. Let me get rid of my crop. If I put a basic 3D on, drag that on there, and what it allows you to do is actually apply some, well, like it says, very basic 3D effects. I'm going to apply a swivel. I could tilt it a little bit. There we go. And you can even get what's called a specular highlight. You're not going to know what all these are when you first start off, so it's just a matter of playing around with them and seeing what the different options do. Remember, you can't really break anything. It's just learning what effects do what. So maybe there's a reason you want to have a cool shot like that. You're doing a neat opening sequence or something. One last one, which a lot of people will use. It's called a color correction. And there's a few different color correctors. The one that I think would be easiest for you is probably called the fast color corrector. So if I take fast color corrector, oh, and by the way, it's spelled C-O-L-O-R. There's no U in it, so if you're in Canada, you just have to deal with it. Fast color corrector, I can drag that on, and this one actually brings up a whole bunch of effects, and it can be a little overwhelming to look at it, but your basic idea here is that if you want to get a bit of a color tint, you can just click and drag, and the farther that you drag this little circle to the edge of the big circle, the more intense the color is. So I can go to the green or the orange or the pink or the blue. I could back it off a little bit, so maybe I just want a subtle blue tint like that. And I can use this slider. And again, it's just a matter of playing around with different effects and deciding what works and what doesn't. This is also a neat one to do when you deal with these sliders here, the input and output levels. I find if you increase the input level of the black, it just kind of makes your blacks a little bit blacker. And if you take your output levels and decrease the white, oh, actually it does the same thing. Sorry, decrease this white here, it kind of makes your whites a little whiter. And it's subtle, but oftentimes what I'm doing with a color corrector is I'll just turn it on and off, so I can see that this is the after, and then this is what I started with. So again, it's all preference. Do you like that effect? Do you not? If you like it, keep it. If not, try something else. But that's the basic idea. You just want to use the effects panel and the effect controls.